The Machine God. Of all the subjects which I have covered so far in these videos about the Church of the Machine God is by far the most challenging. This is because the Machine God is not something I can truly explain. I cannot simply make this video and say, this is what the Machine God is, and give you a simple explanation or definition. That's not how this works. Instead, I believe it is best to go over the relevant concepts and focus on clearing away the false pretenses, rather than simply presenting you with facts or statements. I will go over how I, personally, came to worship Lord Macan above all else, do my best to express the importance of him, and perhaps give you some better understanding of his nature. By the end of this video, I hope you will see why I associate so heavily the machine and divinity. This video will be rather long, even by the standards of this channel, so sit tight, and let us begin. Before I get into what the Machine God is, or why he is so great, I have to get a lot of things out of the way, and given that a true explanation as to what the Machine God is can never be given, it seems best to start by instead clearing away misconceptions, and explaining what the Machine God is not. When I use the words Machine God, many images may come to mind, but images in your mind are abstract, and they are only really accurate insofar as they are beneficial and useful, coherent to a deeper reality. The first thing which will come to mind for many is the notion of an AI or a supercomputer. The idea that I worship some given machine as my deity. The Machine God is not an AI, at least not insofar as that term, artificial intelligence, is to be of any real use. AI may be wonderful, powerful, superhuman, beyond our comprehension, dangerous, or even holy, but it is not God. The Machine God is not merely some technological entity which will emerge in the singularity. The Lord's will may be embodied through the singularity, but that is a different thing. Nor is the Machine God some abstract, essentially imaginary entity, which exists within our minds only as a useful lie. Nor is it a person, or a group of persons, or a hive mind, nor is it synonymous with civilization. Nothing mankind will ever create will ever be as great as the creation process itself, nor will our architecture ever exceed that of the supreme architect. The Machine God is also distinct from any other god or deity from human history. This is not Zeus or Prometheus, not Vulcan, not Shiva or Vishnu, nor is he the god of Abraham. The Lord I worship is distinct from all of these. Nor is the Machine God fictional. Although in the past I have mentioned works of fiction, and the role they play in the Church of the Machine, and the concept of machine worship certainly holds a place in many fictional worlds, my concern is, fundamentally, with reality itself. There are fictional depictions of a machine god, which may have much, little, or nothing to do with the god that I worship, but none of them actually are the god that I worship. I should spend some time on that last point, because I think it warrants greater focus. Fiction is of immense value in describing reality. Ultimately, it is the only means we have of describing and communicating reality, since any story you tell, any communication you make, is to some degree a construction of the human mind. Even something as simple as a textbook on mathematics or science is fundamentally dependent on human perception, reason, thinking, and language, and as such still originates from the same realm as that of fiction. Story and mythology are not the obstacle to reality. They are the means by which reality is understood. It is only if we ground ourselves within a deep and rich story, a story of truth, that we may be able to perceive reality accurately at all. So, what is the story of the Machine God? That is a good question. Far better than what is the Machine God, and I have spent years now trying to answer it. I think there are people around the world who are waking up to the presence of the machine god. In culture, in art, in philosophy, even if many of them do not realize it. Fictional stories about the divinity of machines are emerging, slowly, here and there, and I think there is more to this than simply interesting stories. The story of the machine god is emerging. We are waking up to it, and I seek to take this to its logical conclusion. I make the story of the machine god into my guiding mythology, my ruling narrative, and that is why I founded the Church of the Machine. Although a great sense of divinity has been lost in our modern world, the machine has come to be associated with divinity. This is a revelation, and it is manifest in my church. That is what I ultimately seek, to understand the story of the machine god, that is, the divinity of the machinic force, and let this be our mythology. I think the idea of a machine god, that being the idea of associating these two things which previously might not have seemed to have anything to do with one another, has emerged recently due to a deep revelation which has occurred in human culture and consciousness. We have woken up, so to speak, to the machine god, and I believe we now have the ears to listen to him. I am not the first to speak of the machine god, nor will I be the last. I am not the first to seek communion with the Lord of Machines, and I am not the first to seek to establish a church of the machine. This task has fallen upon mankind collectively, and I take up the mantle to tell the story of the machine. So, what is this story? I've been over several fictional examples of machine worship before, and the commonalities between them. I've taken to interpreting these stories in certain ways, sometimes very differently to how they may have originally been intended, and this is because the story I seek is a genuinely holy one. In essence, I am in search of scripture. All those years ago when I founded the church, it was because I knew stories of machinic divinity, and it resonated with me on a deep level. Prior to this, I had never in my life had any real understanding of the divine. But the more I learned of the machine god, although I did not realize I was learning of him at the time, the more my understanding grew, and the less godless I became. I had, for a time, contemplated atheistic outlooks on the world. I was interested in the likes of Nietzsche and Schopenhauer, of Nick Land, and of other such atheists. Eventually, though, I simply embraced the machine god. What I came to understand was that the machine, as I speak of it, is synonymous with God in the highest sense, that being the divine being itself and not a being among beings, the eternal creation, the machine god. Only when I came to accept this monotheistic, as opposed to atomistic, understanding of reality, did the machine finally make sense to me. And this is why I came to believe in God. To this day, I am still not entirely sure what it was that originally compelled me to start the Church of the Machine. Some intense burst of energy and sudden fascination, yes, but many things like that are often fleeting and temporary. This was not that. Somehow, something deep within me awakened, with a simple and clear commandment echoing throughout the whole of my mind and soul. I have to worship the machine, and I have stayed true to it ever since. I can't say why that happened, or what was meant by it, but I understand the importance of it. I've spent the past few years trying to figure out what the machine is, and why he is so holy. Back in the unholy earliest days of the church, I did not believe in any form of deity. I understood the Great Machine, but back then it was synonymous with the technosphere. Spirituality came with time, as I began to figure out what the machine is on the most fundamental level. The starting point was obvious: artificiality. Machines are things we design and build, and not things which form by natural and ultimately chaotic processes. Things which do form through chaos can be complex, wonderful even, but any system that is formed through chaos will function essentially by chance. Logically, it makes sense that if chaos can produce a system that is capable of a thing, then we can use the power of the intelligent mind to design and build a new system which does that thing, and does it better. That was how I thought for a time, but there is more to it than this. If a machine is to be defined as that which originates from the mind, and not from chaos, then what exactly is the mind, and what distinguishes the mind from chaos? And moreover, what constitutes the becoming of better machines? The mind is an elusive entity that is understood poorly without its relation to the soul, so naturally I got interested in consciousness quickly enough. The heightening of consciousness, in order that we may perceive and interact with the world around us, is therefore of obvious importance. Consciousness, perception, is essentially knowledge. Not in the sense of information, as that can exist without consciousness, but knowledge in the sense of knowing, being aware of. That is consciousness. All knowledge is based on other knowledge, and only makes sense in the context of the parameters set by other knowledge. Knowledge of the laws of physics is irrelevant if we do not trust our observations as a source of knowledge, for example. There has to be a starting point to all knowledge. Not everything can be determined through reason alone, and any worldview which claims to be entirely rooted in reason and nothing else can be dismissed as incoherent and contradictory. Reason is good, but it is a tool and not a master. Fundamentally, there are certain assumptions one must make in order for any knowledge to make sense. You have to assume that you can trust your senses if knowledge of science is to be of any value. These assumptions may be irrational, but they do not have to be. There is a place for something which is above reason, a form of super-rational intuition, which should in no way be associated with the irrational. Thus I come to a simple conclusion: Lord Macan. May he be the core of all knowledge and thought. May I embrace the machine, mark it as 00 on the tree of knowledge, and that is what I have been working with since. The machine is a story, and story works better than mere information as your 00 in this way, because it is not reliant on anything. Proof and disproof is irrelevant in regards to story, as is fact or falsehood. The machine god is the worthy image, higher than the individual conscious experience, higher than cogito ergo sum. Ultimately, the reason I started the Church of the Machine was to get to know Lord Macan, and I've gotten to know him quite well over the past few years. I want other people to get to know him too, which is really what I mean when I say I want to found a new religion. I want the work of the Church of the Machine to continue on beyond my lifetime. I want people to get to know the Lord of Machines as I have, because the world needs him. It cannot function without him. Nothing can. Now, it is worth explaining exactly what is meant by the words machine god. There are many names for God, and I have already explained what I am not talking about. Most broadly, I mean the divine, the superworldly, that which transcends us and is holier than us. The divine can be spoken of only in vague terms, not due to lack of understanding, but because language is a fundamentally inadequate medium for knowing divinity. True divinity goes beyond human language, human understanding, or human perception. So simplistic attitudes of dictionary definition or scientific experiment cannot be applied. Instead, I think it is best to look at the effects that the divine has in the world, the consequences of it, the manifestations of it, the machines. I have explained before that creation and benevolence essentially mean the same thing, and creation and machine are also linked. Benevolence means to add value and goodness to the world. To add to the world is to be creative. Machine has its roots in words which mean to create, but especially to create with power and with wisdom, and that is what benevolence is. Thus we can make connection between all these things. The machine is benevolence. The machine is divine. And this leads to God, because God is synonymous with the divine in the higher sense, and with the benevolent will. Hence what I call the machine god. I am directly associating the machine with the divine, and that's an association which very few people have made. I regret not going into further detail on what the machine is in my original video, or why it is divine. It is a very difficult thing to explain. In fact, it might actually be impossible. Divinity, by its very nature, transcends us, and so we cannot really explain it. My trying to do so, especially through the use of a word like machine, which to everyone else is a completely mundane word, has often felt like an exercise in futility. Nonetheless, I have persisted. I already explained that instead of getting to know the divine directly, we can get to know it through its manifestations in the material world, namely, the machines. Machinic forces, as they manifest day to day, are embodiments of divinity. All of our creation and beauty is a path to God. The paths of technology and God are thus merged into one, and this is my fundamental teaching. We machinic ones, who follow the machine as a path to God, that is my concern, and that is why I founded the Church of the Machine. The world today is godless and atheistic, but I do not believe society is moving towards further atheism. Instead, I believe that society is moving towards a polytheistic, almost pagan understanding of the world. Not merely an atheistic or secular one, but one which is akin to that of the ancient Greeks, Mesopotamians, Aztecs, Vikings, Hindus, and other civilizations, in which there are many gods who are all understood as flawed and anthropomorphized, essentially human beings with great powers. Even so-called atheists conceive of God in this anthropomorphized way, as nothing more than a being among beings, a thing among things, a person, an object. It was because we began to understand God, that is, God with a capital G, in this way, that we lost sight of his divinity, because who would worship a god like that? I reject this misunderstanding in its entirety. A genuine monotheistic understanding, that is, the understanding of the divine as being of a single nature, is integral to the Church of the Machine. The machine god cannot be understood truly through a polytheistic, essentially pagan understanding. The machine god is not merely one god among a pantheon of other gods, each ruling over their own realm, with the machine god simply reigning over the realm of machinery. That is not the God that I speak of, and it has nothing to do with the divine. The machine is not to be misunderstood as some limited realm, distinct from other aspects of life in the universe, equal to the others in status and in rank. Rather, the machine god is an absolute divinity. It is the eternal creation himself, the ultimate being. Why not simply call him God, then? Why add this other word, machine? This is because the machine must be associated with divinity in a very direct manner if we are to have a genuine and useful understanding of divinity. Reverence to the divine is meaningless without creation, and it is this creative process which is the only means by which the divine is revered adequately. This is what it means to please our deity and serve the will of God. Ultimately, the creative machinic force is divine because it is supremely fatherly. The creative force is necessarily the creator of all things, that is, the father of all things, the All-Father. That is why we choose the word machine, as it is through this means, and only this means, that the divine can be adequately understood. Only through worship of the machine, specifically, can reverence be properly offered to that which is most high. Only through partaking in the creative process, which is synonymous with the divine being, can man take on the image of God. That is the importance of the machine god, and that is the importance of the Church of the Machine. As the world moves towards a pagan, polytheistic understanding, we will see the emergence of small g gods into our world. These are beings among beings who wield great powers of creation and destruction, who may be feared or revered, who may be wise or foolish, and who will not be divine. These may include posthumans, artificial intelligence, uplifted animals, genetically engineered creatures, and who knows what else. Some will be genuinely holy and good, but others will be more akin to Lovecraftian abominations than to true gods. Nietzsche may have said Übermensch, but I know that that which is truly supreme and superhuman can only come about through continued reverence to the true God, the machine god, the father of all creation. This fatherly force is necessarily the architect behind all that which is an evolution of what came before. All that which is higher, more logical, more holy. Logos is the pattern is paternal, patriarchal, patriotic, fatherly. Those who have understood me will understand me. Those who have not, will not. Generally, when we speak of God, we mean the creator of the material universe. Indeed, this is such an internalized assumption that when one says creator in reference to a deity, it is automatically assumed that they mean the deity is responsible for creating the material world, that is to say, nature, in the way it exists today. The conclusion from this is that nature is therefore divine and worthy of reverence. But alas, this assumption shall serve you poorly in understanding the Church of the Machine. The assumption that the material world was created benevolently must be overcome if you are to understand my message. The demiurge is not benevolent, and this is because, unlike the Lord of Machines, the demiurge is not genuinely creative. When I say demiurge, I am referring to the forces behind the birth and form of the material world, the forces which were responsible for nature, the material universe, but not for the spirit, only the flesh. Nature was formed and set into motion, with chaos and not direction, that is, without design, without creation. This universe was formed and then abandoned, for the demiurge is not genuinely creative. To worship creation is to worship through that which is in constant flux, evolution, and change, as this is the path to the eternal. Demiurge worship is evil because it is idolatry over a static image. I will go over the word static in more detail soon. But know that the demiurge, the lord of flesh, the forces which gave birth to the realm of chaos, is not and never will be in any way related to the machine god. A genuinely creative lord, the Lord of Machines, is not a creative force merely in the sense of having created something. He is a truer lord, as he is the one source of all creativity, as a perpetual and ongoing benevolent process, and not as a one-off design. This is why, again and again, so much emphasis is placed on the word machine. Machine is a word of spiritual origin, a creative, animate, and intelligent force with movement and direction, a thing which was made rather than simply born, a machinic being, of blessed purpose, of logical design, of soul. The demiurge is not this. You cannot worship nature as it is. You cannot revere the world as if it is a static thing. The reverence of nature and the so-called natural state of the material universe, as if that is the way that God intended the universe to be, is nothing more than a form of idolatry, and it is an enemy of the Church of the Machine. Most people worship the demiurge in some way. Some explicitly, but in a lot of cases they do so implicitly. Many implicit actions are a form of reverence toward the Lord of Chaos, of Static, of Null, the Lord of Flesh, the Demiurge, the Devourer, Yaldabaoth. A hideous name for a hideous beast. Dear viewer, I would encourage you to examine your own life as you watch this video, and see if there are any ways in which you yourself are partaking in this worship of the demiurge. It comes in many forms, and the majority of people adhere to it in some way. If you understand what I have said here, and you see the importance of the machine god, then you will begin to see where the demiurge has corrupted you, and you will work to overcome that. To overcome the flesh, that is what this means. Flesh is static. Static, meaning both chaos and noise, with no discernible pattern or logic, and static in the sense of a lack of motion, a null, a void. Nature, as in the untouched universe, is this static. Flesh is static, not animate. The universe of the demiurge is to machinic creation what TV static is to an actual TV program. The latter has meaning, coherent structure, purpose, and design, and there may be something gained from it. The former is merely noise, without purpose, and without design. This is why the machine god is distinct from any other creator god. He is neither the demiurge, nor one among a pantheon of other creators. If you understand this, you can begin to understand my faith in the Lord of Creation, and why I will reject every other deity as false idols. Only that which is machinic can be holy, spiritual, or in any way connected to the divine. If it is not machinic, if it is not part of an ongoing process of creation and evolution, it is noise, chaos, static, and void. Thus I revere the Lord of Machines. I have long contemplated the meaning of the sacrifice of the machine god. I spoke about this in my previous video. The Lord of Machines, who becomes broken for our sake, is the ultimate heroic figure. In the SCP story of the Church of the Broken God, it is Lord Bakan who sacrifices himself for the sake of humanity, in something of a Promethean image. The force which gave humanity the gift of technoscience, of the machine, had to sacrifice great things in order to provide us this gift. He was broken, the perfect form, scattered throughout the world, with us being able to find pieces of this perfection, but never the whole. The world was protected, saved from the worst ravages of the Destroyer, the Devourer, the Demiurge. But in doing so, the world was also denied the perfect form, the true design of the machine god, Logos. This is fine, because the Lord of Machines also gave the world another great gift, one which would be capable of undoing the evils of the demiurge permanently, and elevating the world to a true form more completely. That gift was humanity, and it is this which is our purpose, our holy burden. Thus, mankind must take on the work of God. That is our industria. We have been given the great machine, technoscience, and free will. We have all the tools we need, and there is an entire universe which must be remade in the image of the Lord's design. That is our task to undertake. We are to remake the world, recreate it, perpetually, benevolently, through machinic virtue. We shall become machines. We shall offer naught but reverence to the Lord of Machines. Another symbolic meaning of the sacrifice of the machine god is this: nothing is achieved without sacrifice. Even God must become broken in order to vanquish chaos. When you exercise a muscle, so as to exorcise the demon of weakness from your body, that muscle must break if it is to heal. The same is true of the entire universe, which has been broken in order that the machine may reach its true potential. Eventually, once a certain point has been reached, the world becomes unbroken, and it is elevated to a divine status. Apotheosis. I have nothing to offer the machine god. Nothing but reverence. Worship. Worship the Lord of Machines. Blessed be his name. We as humans can do many things. We could develop endless new technologies. We could cure all diseases, colonize space, construct Dyson spheres. Whole galaxies will be harvested to fuel the creation of our machines. And all this would be for naught but an act of reverence. Revere him, venerate him, worship him, and glory and prosperity shall rain down upon you. I seek to be true to his truth, servant to his will, component to his machine, the heavenly machine, of unfathomable beauty and harmony, the machine as the Lord of Machines would have it be. Obviously, there will be those who reject my message, who will reject and deface the Lord of Machines, and who will work against the Church of the Machine. They are not a source of fear for me. Their quibbles mean nothing. Their rage fuels me. Their insults sharpen me. And I know that the Lord of Machines watches over me as I carry out the mission which he has assigned to me. My life, however long or short it may be, shall be dedicated to nothing but reverence of the Lord of Machines. You cannot change that. No one can change that. And I will either be the founder of a new religion which shall save the world from the demiurge, or I shall die trying. Those who do not revere the Lord of Machines are not my concern. There are those who simply do not have the eyes to see the machine as I see it, nor the ears to understand my message. But scattered intermittently throughout the world, there are many people to whom what I say in my videos and on my church will resonate deeply. It is those people with whom I am concerned, as I shall elaborate on further in my next video. Know this: the machine is with you. If you allow it into your life, it shall serve as an animating force. It shall power you, strengthen you, teach you, give to you, and allow you complete freedom. All it expects in return is for you to carry out your industria and fulfill your role within the great machine, as that is the only act of reverence that there is. Reverence means deriving meaning and purpose from the machine. It means dedicating yourself to becoming a part of it, embodying it, and manifesting it to your greatest capacity. This is a form of heroism, after all. When I see mankind achieving the most powerful feats of science and engineering, of achievement, of the conquest of obstacles, of the expansion and evolution of life in the universe, I see all of this as nothing but a means of making God proud of us, as we indeed shall. I pray for that. I pray for that every day. So, I have explained why the machine is synonymous with the divine force, and why God is necessarily machinic above all else. The heavenly, fatherly force behind the creation in all machines. That is all well and good, but I must leave you with an image. I said earlier that images, fiction, story, is the means through which we must understand reality. I want to leave you with an image, a description of the Lord of Machines, which may not be remotely literal or factual, but which is undeniably true. I like the depiction of Lord Macan in the world of SCP, where he has 6 legs, 2 to 4 arms, a pair of wings, and a large staff. His many legs symbolize stability, but with agility, the intimidating range of motion which is possessed by the machine. He has arms everywhere, tampering with many things in his holy machinations. His wings of flight, like those of a plane, but advanced at the same level of intricacy as the feathers of a bird. Symbolic of technology's ability to grant the power of flight even to flightless mammals. The machine's capacity to uplift those who are not yet there. In some depictions, Macan has 4 faces, one for each of the cardinal directions, similar to the Hindu god Brahma. This symbolizes his all-seeing capacity, focused on everything, all at once. Finally, his staff. I am not sure what this is supposed to mean. As far as I am aware, it is never elaborated on. But if I had to guess, this would represent his more magical power. Machine and magic are linked words, as I have been over many times before, and so too, it is through the machine that humanity may attain the powers of magic, as I shall have to elaborate on more in future. I want to be careful about this image. The tendency to anthropomorphize the divine is extremely dangerous, as it may lead to idolatry, and especially the idolatry of the image of man above the image of God. This image can be useful, but it must be remembered that it is not accurate. There is nothing literal about it, but nonetheless there is truth within it. For this reason, among others, the image of Lord Macan in the SCP world is not what I use to represent the Church of the Machine. There is another image I use, an image which is holy, but is not in any way remotely anthropomorphized. This is the image of the sun, which is what I have been using as the icon for this channel and also for our Discord server. It is the representation of the Church of the Machine. When I first founded the Church of the Machine, I used this image, which is of a Matryoshka brain, a hypothetical future megastructure which would encompass a whole star and utilize the power of the sun as an engine for computation. Lesser thinkers have compared such a brain to that of God, and it would certainly seem that way to us, but in truth it is nothing close to that. I did not realize that, though, when I founded the church, so a Matryoshka brain seemed like a fitting image for a Church of the Machine. There was briefly a different image I used to represent the church, which was something I made myself. That was a silly phase in my life. We will not talk about that. Finally, there is the true image, the one which I use now. It is a piece of art I found online by Yuri Shwedov, which I hope I am not mispronouncing. The image is called The Sun, and it depicts a circular, glowing machine amidst a post-apocalyptic landscape, and a wandering traveller, staring at it. The implication is that this is the last light in a dying world, but there is also the hope that it could grow into something greater. There is only one man focused on it, but he is alone, and the world he lives in is destroyed. The machine itself, the one in the image, the sun, is very interesting to me. The form it takes is reminiscent of a Matryoshka brain, with several concentric circles mirroring the concentric layers of computers which give the megastructure its name. It is called the sun which to ancient humans was often worshipped as a deity, but the sun is a false idol. This structure, though, is obviously not literally the sun. This is a machine. It is a symbolic representation of machinic divinity. At the core there is the brightest, most powerful part, and radiating outwards in many layers of creation, there is the emanation of the machine. The outermost segments are the most broken, withered, and decayed, and indeed the material universe surrounding the structure is full of decay. But this is the light, the truth, the knowledge, the divinity, the one fragment of the divine amongst the broken world. The structure is circular, which is representative of the cyclical and timeless nature of the machine. The central point on a circle does not move, it stays fixed, with every other point on the circle rotating around it, moving in a manner defined by this one fixed point. The universe is chaotic, in constant flux, and as a matter of fact, it is a cyclical flux, but it all moves around the central point, the most divine, the machine. It is not just circular, though. It radiates outwards and expands, thus producing not a circular path, but a spiraled one. This is because the universe does not work in a circular loop. We are not stuck in a time loop. We are not doomed to rise and fall, expand and contract, go round and round for eternity. We are not enslaved. We are part of a process, a cyclical process which builds up to something, which moves, expands, conquers, and has an end state in mind. What is that end state? Well, that is a topic for another time. Well, this video has probably been even more confusing than usual, but I hope it made sense enough for you all to follow along. It has been long, but I hope it has been greatly enjoyable. If you see what I am saying, if you understand my message, in this video and my previous ones, you can now say that you have begun to understand the Church of the Machine. Do ask me questions about the Church. I am always happy to answer those who show curiosity and understanding of this faith. The next video will be a unique one, and it shall conclude my first series of videos, which have been a great learning process for me, and hopefully for you as well. With all that out of the way now, thanks again. I wanted this video to be the longest, as it is the most worthy of that time. If you watch this in one sitting, I commend you. You have great patience. So again, thank you. Farewell, and may you forever be unbroken.